Hello, Neogenians. Welcome to Dawn of the New Earth. We have an awesome topic today. We're discussing how Adam and Eve were originally a single divine being and the real reason why God divided them and the true fall of Eden and how we can repair that divide to reclaim that power. This is going to be great. We're taking a look at two banned gospels today, the Apocalypse of Adam, and we're also continuing reading from the Gospel of Philip. And you're going to see how all this connects together when it talks about Adam and Eve being a single being. And as you've seen in the Gospel of Philip, it's all about uniting opposites together. So we're going to see a lot of crossover here. That's what we're going to talk about, the Adam and Eve story that you weren't told about in Sunday school. So let's get started, my friends. We're going to get going. As always, hey, my channel, it's about spreading knowledge, spreading awareness, so that we can create a new earth through a new consciousness. So when you hit like and subscribe, it really helps a lot. It spreads this information around. So please take a quick second to hit like and subscribe right now. I do appreciate it. Also, if you enjoy my work and you want to see this channel grow, support over on Patreon or become a member right here on YouTube. It's the best way to support my work and you get a lot of great stuff. Check out the different tiers, the different levels. You get access to all of our members only videos. There's a new members only video every week. In our Discord server, the Citadel, we have the Nexus Academy where every Sunday we are having Neogenian presenters give live classes and study groups based on Neogenian topics. It's awesome. So you get a lot and I really appreciate it. I want to remind you that my new book is out right now, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. If you want to know how to achieve a higher consciousness rationally and logically, the link is in the description of this video. And also, my second book in the series is available for pre-order right now. It's called Meta-Rationalism, The New Science of Mind. Very excited about that. All right, my friends, with all the announcements out of the way, let's begin and take a look at what we're discussing here today, which is how Adam and Eve were originally a single divine being and what this has to do with what we've been talking about in the Gospel of Philip. Because last week's discussion on the Gospel of Philip was called How to Protect Yourself from Evil Spirits, which was very interesting. We saw in the Gospel of Philip, it was talking about how essentially there are demonic female spirits that will attach themselves to men and how there are demonic male spirits that will attach themselves to females unless the masculine has gone through the power of integrating the feminine within itself and the woman has gone through the power of integrating the masculine energies within herself. So they essentially become whole beings and have no room for those quote unquote evil spirits to take root. You see what's trying to be said there in the Gospel of Philip? It's basically saying if you have a man who's missing the feminine element, an evil, that sort of makes room for an evil feminine spirit. Or if you have a woman who's missing a masculine element, that's kind of like leaving room for an evil masculine spirit to take over. But if you become whole, then there's no room for that evil spirit to take control. Now, of course, we understand this in an allegorical and archetypal way. So these aren't literally evil spirits, but what it has to do is the Jungian aspect of the anima and the animus, basically meaning like the unconscious mind. If you haven't integrated the internal opposite, the unconscious can direct your life. As Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So it's basically about having an unintegrated psyche or a fractured psyche where you haven't properly integrated that aspect in you. And we've seen how that can lead to a lot of negative consequences where men will look at women as objects to dominate and control, and then women can look at men as being resources to exploit and use. That's a possibility that can happen when you haven't integrated your inner opposite. We also talked about how talking in terms of male and female is just how we're doing it because that's how they're talking about in the Gospel of Philip. We don't have to do that. We can talk about in terms of just the mirror self or the inner opposite, which gets away from a gender binary to include non-binary and gender fluid identities. That absolutely has a place here. We're just talking in sort of old school language because these are old school books. So let's continue and see what this has to do with Adam and Eve and how they were originally one being according to the Apocalypse of Adam. And I like the Apocalypse of Adam a lot. So we're taking a look at two books today, the Apocalypse of Adam and the Gospel of Philip. Now, what's interesting about this is these are actually two different schools of thought in terms of Gnosticism. The Apocalypse of Adam is a Sethian Gnostic text, and the Gospel of Philip is a Valentinian Gnostic text, but they have a lot of crossover. And so we're going to see here that the apocalypse of Adam really starts to describe something that's going to be referenced in the Gospel of Philip. So let's just start. Let's just dive right in. As usual, if it sounds a little confusing at first, don't worry about it. I'll explain it. It'll be fine. But let's just jump right in and see what this has to say. So we're going to start with the apocalypse of Adam. Oh, and I want to mention, as always, people ask me, hey, where can I read these books? You can read them for free, all of them, on gnosis.org. That's gnosis.org. They have all the Nag Hammadi scriptures there that you can read for free. It's an awesome resource. I love it. It's a great website. Highly recommended. Okay, so let's jump right into this. This is in the apocalypse of Adam. So first of all, what is the apocalypse of Adam? I'm actually doing a video about it fairly soon to discuss it in even more detail. But essentially what the apocalypse of Adam is about is it's about Adam telling his son Seth his side of the story, essentially, the side of the story that you're not told in the Bible. And so let's begin and see what happens. So this is Adam talking to his son Seth. And you'll notice it's not Cain or Abel, but Seth. And that's actually really important according to Sethian Gnosticism. But we'll see why. Because, okay, well, spoiler alert, Seth represents the unity of Adam and Eve once again. But let's get into this. You'll see why that's important. So Adam is talking, and Adam says, "Listen to my words, my son Seth. When God had created me out of the earth, along with Eve, your mother, I went about with her in a glory which she had seen in the eon from which we had come forth. She taught me a word of knowledge of the eternal God, and we resembled the great eternal angels, for we were higher than the God who created us, and the powers with him whom we did not know." All right, so there's a lot to talk about here, and I just want to say something is that we have a lot to get through today. You know me, I would love to spend hours on each one of these passages, but I'm going to try and explain them all pretty fast because there's a lot of material that I want to talk to you guys about today. So what is this talking about? Adam is talking to his son Seth, and he's saying, hey, guess what? Before your mother and I were material bodies, we existed in a realm of divine light. And Eve taught me about the knowledge of the eternal God. So you'll see that according to Gnosticism, there's two gods. There's the true eternal God, which is the divine mind of light, the source, and then the evil God of the Bible, the evil creator God, known as the Demiurge or Yaldabaoth, or the chief archon. And so basically what he's saying is that Eve taught Adam about the eternal God, the true God, but we were higher than the God who created us and the powers with him. And when he says the God who created us, he means their bodies. The evil creator God did not create their souls, their true eonic selves, but instead he created their material bodies. And it says, then God, the ruler of the eons and the powers, divided us in wrath. Then we became two eons. So do you see this here? In this aspect, you have the evil creator God dividing Adam and Eve into two eons. It says they were originally one. They were originally a single eon, but in his wrath, he divided them in two. Now, why did he do this? Because when he did this, he made them incomplete. And because they're two halves. And so what we're going to see here in a second when we talk about the Gospel of Philip, that the Gospel of Philip is all about reuniting the two halves together. That's what we talked about a little bit about last time, about the whole evil spirit thing. But you can see how this is bringing it back, discussing it with the archetypal first humans and why essentially humanity is divided in story form, of course. Now, what this is talking about here, why did the evil creator God do this? Why did the evil creator God split them in two? The evil creator God divided them because they were more powerful than him. And so what he wanted to do was basically, he can't overpower them. So he basically has to trick them. And he's constantly doing things like putting them in bodies, separating them, creating things to distract them, sending floods to destroy the world, all this stuff to try and keep humanity from realizing what they are, constantly keeping humanity in a state of ignorance. That's what Yaldabaoth, that's what the God of the Bible represents. The God of the Bible, if you could pick one word to represent this being, it would be ignorance. He is an ignorant God that tries to keep humanity in ignorance. It's that whole idea is it's not evil destroying the world, it's stupidity destroying the world. It's more so that this is a stupid being trying to keep humanity in a stupid state. And we can see all around us that has been pretty effective, hasn't it? Now, of course, this isn't literally true, but in an allegorical way, understanding that the powers of ignorance have enveloped this world and enveloped the psyche, and that people are divided and fractured. So it says in the Apocalypse of Adam, he divided them. And when this happened, the glory in our hearts left us, me and your mother Eve, along with the first knowledge that breathed within us, and it fled from us. For this reason, I have called you by the name of that man who is the seed of the great generation for whom it comes. After those days, the eternal knowledge of the God of truth withdrew from me and your mother. Since that time, we learned about dead things like men. Then we recognized the God who created us, for we were not strangers to his powers, and we served him in fear and slavery. And after these things, we became darkened in our hearts. So essentially what this is talking about here is Adam and Eve, or Adam's talking to his son and saying, hey, we were originally one being. This evil God, he divided us into two. When he divided us into two, we lost all knowledge of what we really were and the realm of the true God and the realm of divine light. We lost all knowledge of that. We became mired in darkness, and we started to, we recognized the evil God as being God because they were in ignorance, and they served him in fear and in slavery because they lost knowledge of what they truly are. They're more powerful than that God, but it's because they lost their knowledge of what they truly are that they thought that they were less than that God. So we're going to continue here, but one quick thing that I want to say that's really important, I'm just going to say this fast. The reason why he's talking to Seth is because according to Gnostic texts, Cain and Abel, the ones that you're more familiar with, weren't the result of the union of Adam and Eve. They were the result of the evil creator God forcing himself on Eve. So the evil creator God forced himself on Eve, and that's where Cain and Abel came from that terrible act. Seth, however, was the true son of Adam and Eve, and so that represents allegorically the reunification of Adam and Eve. And so Adam represents mind, Eve represents the ability of mind to think about itself. And so Seth represents the potential in all of us, because we're all descendants of Seth, according to Gnosticism, and even in the Bible, we're considered all descendants of Seth. But so because Seth has the power to think about oneself and realize his internal power, then so do we all as descendants of Seth. And that's basically just talking about how every one of us has the potential through self-knowledge and self-reflective thought to understand what we truly are and to overcome that divide and become whole and united. So with that in mind, let's now turn to the Gospel of Philip, another once banned gospel, heretical gospel. And we're going to see a lot of these themes, but put in the context of unifying this divided opposite within you. So you can think of it like this a little bit. Adam and Eve were originally one being. They were divided in two. Seth was their offspring. And so within Seth represents the what was once divided united again. So essentially what this means, since we're all the descendants of Seth, we all have the potential to divide that fracture that's now within us. Instead of it being, Adam and Eve, that fracture exists within us. And we have the power to unite that fracture together and become whole again. And we all have that potential, but it just doesn't happen automatically. We have to do the work. And this is what the Gospel of Philip is all about. This is why the Gospel of Philip, it's very controversial and inspired the Da Vinci Code, because it's the one where Jesus kisses Mary Magdalene, and Mary Magdalene is allegedly portrayed as his wife, but it's not because he was literally married to Mary Magdalene. This is all a allegory for Christ unifying with the divine feminine, and then this all has the implications for all of us. It's a model for all of us to follow. This is why it was talking about protecting yourself from evil spirits by unifying with that fractured inner aspect of oneself, the inner opposite. Let's continue. And it is possible that Jesus Christ was actually married to Mary Magdalene, but there's no way we can know that. There's no way. But regardless, it has allegorical implications that we can learn from. So let's start with the Gospel of Philip here now and see what this is all about. So it says, and notice this theme of unifying opposites, which is present through like the whole Gospel of Philip, basically. Through the Holy Spirit, we are indeed begotten again, or born again, but we are begotten through Christ in the two. We are anointed through the Spirit. When we were begotten, we were united. None can see himself either in water or in a mirror without the light. Now, this is very important. Keep that in mind. It's saying, no, I'm going to explain this in a minute, but keep that in mind. No one can see themselves in water or a mirror without light. Obviously, you need light to see. This is cool stuff, all right? And what does water or mirror do? It reflects. It's a reflection. So you need light or a higher state of consciousness to be able to see the mirror, your reflected self, so that you can unify with it, okay? So, nor again can you see in light without mirror or water. For this reason, it is fitting to baptize in the two, the light and the water. Now the light is the chrism. So you see how you can see these themes of uniting opposites being discussed in terms of Valentinian Gnosticism, but more in terms of, the apocalypse of Adam is more like a story, where the Gospel of Philip is kind of like saying, hey, do this. This is how you become whole. This is how you unite with yourself. So the Gospel of Philip is more like almost like a self-help kind of book. Not literally, but you get what I'm saying. It's more of like, hey, here's how you can apply this to your life. Here's how you can heal this divide within you. So the Gospel of Philip is talking about this renewal or being born again. But it's Christ who facilitates this rebirth, both spiritually and physically. So what does it mean that by Christ? Remember, Christ always represents higher consciousness. So stepping into a higher consciousness facilitates, is what enables this rebirth to occur. And so it's like being born again. But it's, of course, obviously you're not literally being born again, but it's being born again in the sense where you are realizing that you are something completely different, and thus everything is completely, your priorities are completely different. So, and then it talks about the light in the mirror. And obviously we can't see ourselves in water or a mirror without light. And so this is talking about how we need that higher awareness. We need the light. We need that true awareness and true vision to be able to see our reflected self in the mirror and the water, which is super cool. So you're seeing how this kind of references is a throwback to the idea in Sethian Gnosticism, where because we're the descendants of Seth, we all have the ability to look within, but we actually have to do it. It's potentially there. There are plenty of people who will remain in darkness, and in darkness, they won't be able to look into the waters. In darkness, they won't be able to look into the mirror. They'll just remain fractured. So the Gospel of Philip continues and says, by the way, if I say the word blank, it is because these texts were damaged. They were found buried near the tombs of Egypt in 1945 in a jar. They're all messed up. So if I say blank, it's because there are some pieces of the manuscript missing. There were 3 buildings specifically for sacrifice in Jerusalem. The one facing the west was called the Holy. Another facing the south was called the Holy of the Holy. The third facing east was called the Holy of the Holies, the place where only the high priest enters. So it's a lot of holiness happening here. You can see, which is appropriate because it's about becoming whole. So, but here, so what's all this talking about? And for everyone who takes this stuff literally, remember, these are allegories. And everyone takes this, so many people take this stuff to be literally true. These are all allegories. These are metaphors. And listen here, this book explicitly says it's a metaphor. It says right here, baptism is the holy building. Redemption is the holy of the holy. And the holy of the holies is the bridal chamber. So they're literally saying, like, this is what this stuff stands for. Baptism includes the resurrection and the redemption. The redemption takes place in the bridal chamber. But the bridal chamber is that which is superior to blank. You will not find blank are those who pray. The veil was rent. Because of this, something about because of the bridal chamber, the veil was rent from top to bottom, for it was fitting for some from below to go upward. All right, so what is all this? What is all this being discussed here? Some really cool stuff. So we're talking about 3 buildings, allegorical buildings in Jerusalem. These 3 buildings symbolize different stages of our spiritual journey. The first building is called the Holy, and it faces west, and this represents baptism. And baptism is like our starting point, right? When you join, a church to symbolize that you are beginning your journey within that spiritual community, you're baptized. It's symbolically and metaphorically the starting point. It's the grand entrance where we're just starting our awakening. It's the foundation. Sets the stage for everything else. Next up is the Holy of the Holy, which faces south, and this one stands for redemption. So redemption is that deeper spiritual awakening. It's not just about the beginning, but it's about actually beginning to transform ourselves and realize our divine nature. At this point, we're starting to realize our spiritual essence and that connection to the divine. So it's kind of like the idea of the baptism is, where you start. The redemption is where you start to realize, I'm having an awareness of what I am. And then finally, the Holy of the Holies faces east. And this is the most sacred place where only the high priest could go. And according to this, it represents the bridal chamber. So what is the bridal chamber? According to Valentinian Gnosticism, the bridal chamber is absolutely key. And this is a ritual that represents the unification of opposites, because the bridal chamber is where the man and a woman, typically we're talking about, of course, anyone of any gender can get married. But for this allegory here, it's about, a man and a woman being united in the bridal chamber, obviously through intercourse. But this is metaphorically a metaphor for uniting that within oneself. So it's the ultimate union with the divine, right? So this is the highest level of spiritual divine development. So the bridal chamber is about the unification of all opposites, really. It's not even just in terms of like the inner feminine or inner masculine or the mirror self. Remember, we don't have to think about it in terms of masculine and feminine. We're just talking about it a lot that way because that's how they talked about it in this book. But this inner unification in the bridal chamber is a unification with all things. It's a union of subject and object. It's a union of masculine and feminine. It's a union of all the above and the below. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus Christ says you have to make the in like the without like the in, the above like the below, and the below like the above, the male like the female, and the female like the male, the blah, 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 blah. You get it. It's all opposites coming together within a unity. So in this case here, when we talk about baptism, it's like the first start into our spiritual life. Redemption is a deeper awakening. And the bridal chamber is the ultimate union with the divine. So it's first, hey, I'm starting out. Wow, I recognize there's divinity within me. And then I'm actually taking steps to unify with that divinity. Now, this is extremely close to the Neogenian system of interstar actualization, which is an aspect of psychogenesis, which is about integrating your unconscious. Here you have the dynamic opposites of consciousness and the unconscious, and it's about unifying with the unconscious, making the unconscious conscious. Like Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And it mirrors this a lot in that the first step is to, like it says here, is to just to like acknowledge, like understand that you're divine. The first step is to realize that you have these unconscious aspects of yourself. And then according to this, the third step is to integrate or unify. And the third step in interstar actualization is the integration. So in interstar actualization, by the way, there's 3 steps. First, you have to acknowledge it. Then you have to find out what it is, it's its qualities. And then you have to actually integrate it. And integrate is a fancy word for deal with it. You have to figure out how to have it be involved in your life in a positive way. So anyway, that's just kind of an aside here, but the bridal chamber is very important and represents divine unity in many different aspects. So this is obviously really powerful. And then it talks about the veil being torn from top to bottom. This is an extremely powerful symbol. So the veil being torn from top to bottom symbolizes that the divine realm that was once hidden and inaccessible is now open for us to enter it. And according to this, it means that those who are down here can now ascend to higher spiritual states. And it's not about going places. It's about realizing the truth about you, what you are. It's a consciousness ascension. It's a raising in consciousness. It's an ascension in consciousness. It's not a literal ascension. This is why we always have to remind ourselves these things are allegorical. These things are metaphorical. These things are symbolic. But you have that ripping apart of the veil, which represents understanding the unconscious aspects of the self. Now, in terms of how we understand the psyche to work, this would be like the divide between consciousness and unconscious. You can think of like the veil as being that which separates consciousness from the unconscious, metaphorically speaking. So what we want to do when we want to reintegrate the unconscious into consciousness is we're sort of going behind that veil, working with unconscious aspects and bringing some of that back into consciousness to integrate. Now, the veil is actually a useful thing. We don't want that veil to just literally be gone, because that wouldn't be integration then. And this is very prevalent in certain conditions like schizophrenia. People who are schizophrenic have a very thin veil. So they're constantly having unconscious elements leak into consciousness. It's almost like having because your dream is all formed from your unconscious. It's like having your dreams leak into waking reality and not being able to tell what's real and what's not real. So that veil is there for a reason. And if it becomes too thin, that can be difficult. But what we're trying to do here is not just like, oh, we're just going to rip it down and it's all going to come flooding through. It's about understanding what's behind there and consciously integrating it into a cohesive way that benefits your life. Okay. So anyway, that's really, really cool. The Gospel of Philip is very on point with a lot of elements of depth psychology. And Carl Jung, who's an amazing psychologist, one of my favorites, was obsessed with Gnosticism. He wore a Gnostic ring. Obviously, he didn't believe it was literally true, but he believed that these represented aspects of the psyche, and clearly they can. So this continues by saying, the powers do not see those who are clothed in the perfect light, and consequently are not able to detain them. One will clothe himself in this light sacramentally in the union. So who are the powers? The powers are the archons, the dark evil beings. And what do these archons, what do these powers represent? They represent our unconscious forces. Remember in the previous video, we talked about those archonic unconscious forces, in terms of like evil male or evil female spirits. So they represent the unconscious forces, the hidden parts of ourselves that can control and influence us without our awareness. Again, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So these archons or dark powers can be thought of as obstacles or barriers that are keeping us from becoming whole, keeping us from self-actualizing. But here's the key. When we illuminate our unconscious mind, when we integrate, it says, those who are clothed in the perfect light, once we make that which is dark illuminated, the dark waters of the unconscious being shining the light on those, when we bring those hidden parts into the light and integrate them properly, well, then they lose their power over us because they're not controlling us anymore. We're working with them. And that's the cool thing here, is that if we're thinking of these as like dark, evil spirits, it's not like we're trying to get rid of them. We're trying to bring them into the light so they become transformed from a being of darkness to a being of light that's actually helping us actualize. So it's about transforming. Remember, energy cannot be created or destroyed. So it's not about destroying these aspects of ourselves. It's about transforming them, illuminating them. It's like shining a light on in a dark room and everything becomes visible. And so it loses they're not working in the shadows, controlling things anymore, because you see them and you go, hey, you stop doing that. This is how we're going to do things. This is how we're going to run things. And so it's not controlling your life anymore. So this is the allegory here where it says the powers don't see those who are clothed in the perfect light, and they're not able to detain them. They're not able to control them. And how does this happen? It says one will clothe himself in the light in the union when one becomes whole, when one, and in our interpretation, making the unconscious conscious. So basically we are clothed in this light and no longer at the mercy of our own unconscious forces. Let's see here. It continues here. So this is important. We are discussing, it says that the woman had not separated from the man. Okay, so here, think about the callback here to the apocalypse of Adam and the separation of Adam and Eve. This says, if the woman had not been separated from the man, and that's what happened with Adam and Eve, if the woman had not separated from the man, she would not die with the man. His separation became the beginning of death. So this is essentially saying that death began with the separation and the division of a unity into a fractured entity. What does this mean? Well, it means that death occurs because you don't remember your divine essence. So you think you're just a body. So you are controlled by these forces in your mind that you're not aware of. You believe that death is real. And this happens because of the split. But when you repair that split, then all that changes and you realize that death is an illusion. Now, of course, your avatar, your body can still perish. So be careful and take care of yourself. But you as a true divine entity, you are divine. And it says, because of this, Christ came to repair the separation, which was from the beginning, and again, to unite the two and to give life to those who died as a result of the separation and unite them. So Christ always represents higher consciousness. So Christ came to repair the separation. Higher consciousness arrived to repair the separation. So Christ in these settings represents an entity or being, a person, teaching humanity, hey, guess what? You need to look within. It's not a savior figure. He's not a savior figure. He represents humanity's capacity to look within and him waking humanity up to that fact. So according to Sethian Gnosticism, Jesus Christ is actually an incarnation of Seth. So remember, Seth represents the unity of Adam and Eve and all of our potential because we're all descendants of Seth. Christ in Sethian Gnosticism is the incarnation of Seth and represents basically Seth coming back to say, hey, everyone, look within. So Seth originally represents the union and our potential to look within. And then Christ, as the incarnation of Seth, represents, okay, now actually do it. Like wake up and actually see that potential you have, illuminate it, look at it, reflect on it, and integrate it. That's what Christ represents. Not a savior figure. It's your capacity for higher consciousness. It says, but the woman who is united to her husband in the bridal chamber Indeed, those who have united in the bridal chamber will no longer be separated. Thus, Eve separated from Adam because it was not in the bridal chamber that she was united with him. So, see, this is where we're talking about, and they even reference Adam and Eve here, in that Eve was separated from Adam. But when you enter the bridal chamber, you repair that unity. You repair that fracture into a unity. So remember, this is not being literal. This is not like, oh, you have to find a husband to be saved. No, of course not. That's not what that means at all. It's about uniting inner opposites. And it doesn't matter if you're male or female or non-binary or gender fluid or who you're attracted to, or if you get married or don't get married, or how, none of this stuff matters. It's all an allegory, just like the different buildings represented different stages of spiritual growth. It's not literally about a building. This isn't literally about getting married. Marriage just represents in the bridal chamber the union. And so we have here, even in the Gospel of Philip, discussing, Adam and Eve's separation, but that we can repair that separation through the bridal chamber, which is the pinnacle of enlightenment, where we unify all opposites within ourselves. And once again, remember, we don't have to think in terms of male and female. We can think in so many other terms, like the right hemispheric functions of the brain versus the left hemispheric functions of the brain. And because this is very cultural, it's something that changes, like what a woman represents and what a man represents, it changes across cultures, across time, across locations. And one good example of that is even in Gnosticism. Like typically today we consider masculine, typically, right? Traditionally, masculine is associated with like logic and reason and self-awareness. And the woman is usually associated with the realm of the unconscious and meaning and intuition. But in Gnosticism, where there is definitely some crossover in their representation, Adam represents mind, and Eve, the feminine, represents the mind's ability to reflect upon itself, like self-awareness, which normally that would be, not normally, but in our culture today, we would normally associate that with masculinity. That's just to say that all these labels are stupid, and they're not stupid, but you don't have to, if you believe that if you take the label as being true rather than just a label, then you're going to run into problems. So I just want to make that very clear. I make that clear in like almost all my videos where we talk about this, but I really want to hammer this home, because when we talk about things in terms of male and female, these are very nebulous concepts that change over time. We're just talking about dynamic forces. We could talk about, the light and darkness, left hemispheric functions, right hemispheric functions, the above and the below, the higher self and the ego. Like all these different opposites are what are, I don't know if I would say that the ego is not technically the opposite of the self. The ego is an expression of the self, but you get what I mean, essentially. It's the unification of that which is fragmented, talking in terms of like men and women and getting married and being in a bridal chamber. That's all allegory. I just want to make that clear, because a lot of new age spiritual groups are having a very toxic idea of divine masculine and divine feminine. There's nothing wrong with talking about divine masculine, divine feminine, but they're getting into a very religious, toxic idea of it, where they're almost thinking about like, oh, it has to be this way. Like, Christians are like, oh, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. So therefore homophobia, or not homophobia, therefore being gay is a sin, which is stupid. Obviously that's not true. And we're having, a lot of those in the new age community being like, oh, well, reality is just the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So we have to find our twin flame, and anything else is not, it just, no, that's we start getting into some religious territory that is, your twin flame is within you, and it's just your inner opposite. Now, of course, that doesn't mean we can't find partners that enable us to experience that in a projected way, in our external way, and that can be extremely fulfilling. But ultimately, right? Ultimately, these things are within you. You don't have to find them in another person. It can be fulfilling, of course, obviously. It's very fulfilling to have a great relationship with another person, and they can help you on your journey of actualizing those inner aspects. You can help each other actualize those inner aspects. And that's when you can explore different polarities and be like, hey, if I'm act this way, perhaps it allows you to explore these different aspects of yourself easier, and vice versa. If you act this way, maybe it'll help me explore different aspects of myself. And that's all about just being in a partnership and working with someone. That's why it's great to be in a partnership with someone who cares about these things and is conscious, because you can make a lot of growth with a partner that is where you're actively helping each other actualize your inner aspects, which is very great. Unfortunately, that's very rare today. Because people don't think about anything other than what bullshit is on TV. So, but let's continue, because there's a lot of great stuff to get through here. So we talked about how this separation between the man and the woman is like the anima and the animus in Jungian psychology, the feminine aspect within the man and the masculine aspect in the woman. But we already discussed that to death. Just always remember that it doesn't have to be discussed in those terms. We can talk about it like in terms of the mirror self. But now it says, indeed, one must utter a mystery. The Father of everything united with the Virgin who came down, and a fire shone for him on that day. He appeared in the great bridal chamber. Therefore, the body came into being on that very day. It left the bridal chamber as one who came into being from the bridegroom and the bride. So Jesus established everything in it through these. It is fitting that each of the disciples to enter into his rest. So now we're almost talking about this on a cosmic scale. It starts with a mystery, the Father of everything, the source of all existence, uniting with the Virgin who descended. And so this union is symbolized here by light and creation, and that it took place in the great bridal chamber. So basically what this is a powerful image of the spiritual realm and the material realm and its unification, the unification of the spiritual and the material. When the Father united with the Virgin, a fire shone, symbolizing this burst of light and divine life. So basically, what we're talking about here is like the cosmic idea of unity, the grand idea of unity as the spiritual domain or the metaphysical domain with the physical domain and the domain of matter. And this is known as the great work in a lot of occult societies, not even in occult societies, but even in philosophy as well. In some schools of thought, it's known as the great work, which is the union of subject and object, which is about realizing what is out there is actually in here. So this is like a step above. It's more than just being psychologically whole, but it's about realizing that all reality reflects that as well, in that everything that you think is out there is actually in here. And that's the ultimate union, the union of subject and object. And a lot of people have a hard time understanding that. The easiest way to understand that is through a dream. When you are in a dream, that which is out there is actually in here. When you're dreaming, your dream world is all inside your head. Well, not literally inside your head. It's a projection from your internal frequency patterns, which are not located in your head, but you get the idea. It's within your mind. It's within you. It's not out there somewhere. Your dream was within your mind. But it seems like it's out there, doesn't it? And when you're not lucid, you believe that it's out there. But when you become lucid in the dream, you realize, oh, this is all in my mind, even though it seems like it's out there. So everything that's out here is a collective dream. It's in our collective minds. In other words, it's formed from all the frequencies of all the minds in existence. This is a reality of frequency patterns, mental frequency patterns, mathematical sinusoids. This is a mathematical world. It's a domain of mind, mathematical mind, that is being projected as a domain that we experience as though it were out there. But it's not actually out there. There is nothing that is mind independent. Everything is dependent upon mind. So there's a couple more things I want to talk about real quick. So let's get through these fairly fast, but we're going to come back here to talk about Adam. So it says, Adam came into being from two virgins, from the spirit and the virgin earth. Therefore, just talking about Adam being a blend of a spiritual being and a material being. Christ, therefore, was born from a virgin to rectify the fall, which occurred in the beginning. So these ideas here is talking about how Christ's virgin birth is symbolic, basically, right? It's not this miraculous birth where he was actually born from a virgin, but it's a redemptive act. It's about correcting the fall that occurred from the beginning of time. And that fall, of course, was the division. So Christ is about restoring that harmony that was lost. And that's just metaphorical through being born from a virgin. So that's, not to be taken literally. All these stories are really crazy when you take. That's why Christianity has become such a crazy religion, because it takes all the stories in the Bible as being literally true. They are not literally true. And we are not meant to be Christians. We are meant to be Christ's. So it says here, there are 2 trees growing in paradise. And this is kind of weird, but kind of interesting. So it says there are 2 trees growing in paradise. Paradise being the Garden of Eden. The one of the trees bears animals, and the other bears men or people. Adam ate from the tree which bore animals, and he became an animal, and he brought forth animals. For this reason, the children of Adam worshipped animals. God created men, blank. Men create God. That is the way it is in the world. Men make gods and worship their creation. It would be fitting for the gods to worship men. Isn't that a cool line? God created man, men create God. That's the way it is in this world. Men make gods and worship their creation. It would be fitting for gods to worship men. So what's all this talking about? Really cool stuff here. So first of all, this weird idea of a tree of animals and a tree of people, and you have Adam who eats from the tree of animals, and he becomes like an animal, and his descendants are like animals. So basically what this is talking about is, again, allegorical for symbolizing a primal earthly existence. Being, you're living, rather than living like a true human and understanding one's divine nature, you're just living like an animal. You're obsessed with the here and now, and not thinking about any higher things. You're just thinking about, what's on TV, who you can fuck, what food you can get for dinner, blah, 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 blah. And hey, again, nothing wrong with food and sex and watching TV. But the point is, if that's all you're into, that's all you do, basically that's like an animalistic existence, in other words. So it's talking about how the children of Adam have a tendency to be obsessed with the material and instinctual aspects of life. Basically, it's saying like, look, this is the book's way of saying like, look, most people today act like animals. That's what it's saying. Most people today act like animals, where the tree that bears men obviously represents humanity's potential to rise above this animalistic behavior and understand our divine nature. But it's basically saying, okay, look, most people act like animals. And then in the really interesting, which I think is really interesting, it says, God created man, but men create gods. So think about that. In this world, humans create God and then worship their creations. I mean, like, that's what they basically did in Christianity. These beings weren't meant, like, Jesus wouldn't want to be. Can you imagine today, right? Like, of course, we don't know if Jesus actually existed. I believe he did, and I believe that he was an enlightened person. And I believe that if Jesus Christ were here today and people were worshiping him, he'd be like, stop, stand up. Don't you see that you're supposed to be divine? And divine beings don't worship others. Divine beings stand straight. That's why in the Gospel of Thomas says, Jesus Christ says, when you drink from my mouth, I will become you and you will become me. That equality, when you understand the words that I'm saying, that's what drinking from my mouth means. It's not a weird fetish. It means when you drink from the mouth, you understand his words, you become him and he becomes you, because we're all one. Anyway, you have this idea of humans creating gods. And then we worship these gods, which is a projection of our power self. We talk about the inner opposite a lot. The power self is our inner potential that yearns to actualize. But the really cool thing about this text is that it says that it would be more fitting for the gods to worship men. And so this totally flips the perspective and emphasizes how divine humanity is, right? So in essence, the two trees represents two paths, an animalistic existence or a higher spiritual one. And this is a really cool passage here. It says, in this world, the slaves serve the free. But in the kingdom of heaven, the free will minister to the slaves. Isn't that cool? Listen to that. In this world, the slaves serve the free. But in the kingdom of heaven, the free will minister to the slaves. I'll explain what that means in just a minute, but I want to read this last passage. The children of the bridal chamber will minister to the children of the marriage. The children of the bridal chamber will have just one name, rest. Altogether, they take no other form because they have contemplation. So remember, the bridal chamber represents the union, and then the children of the bridal chamber is like the spiritual result of that union. Okay, but first we have this idea of the free and the slaves, which is really interesting. So it says that in the kingdom of heaven, the free will minister to the slaves. So basically what this is about how those who have achieved higher consciousness, who have reached a greater understanding, are going to help those who are still bound and ensnared by lower levels of consciousness. So do you see this idea here? And this is what really gets me, is that a lot of people who are looking for spiritual enlightenment, a lot of people also who are attracted to like occultism and secret societies. And I'm not saying it's all like this. There are some great occult groups and great occultists, right? So I'm not, but there is this tendency for people to be obsessed with power. I want power. I want to know the secrets. I want to have power. I want to know what others don't, so I can be more powerful than other people. And while when you do achieve a spiritual awakening and reach a higher state of consciousness, you are more powerful, it's not about lording over others. It says here that the free will minister to the slaves. Basically, you are in a position where you're serving others, essentially. When you truly understand what you are, you're not lording over others, you're helping others. You're helping those who are bound to break those chains of a lower state of consciousness so that they can be free as well. And so then it talks about the children of the bridal chamber, or the result of that unity. And so this is the achievement of the highest spiritual union possible. And it says they have one name. What's their name? Rest. Essentially, because there's nothing else to do. One is unified. One is complete. One is whole. There is no longer any dialectical contradiction within the psyche to resolve. All of it has been resolved. This is a state of total peace, completeness. And it says they don't take any form because they have contemplation, because they exist in the state of just self-knowledge and divine rest, total, complete wholeness and unity. That's what the children of the bridal chamber represent, which is the complete and total unification of all opposites within the self. So we start again, Sethian Gnosticism and Valentinian Gnosticism are different, but you can see a lot of crossovers here, where in the Apocalypse of Adam, we talked originally about how Adam and Eve were a single eon that were divided in two, and they have their whole idea about how this is why they lost knowledge of what they really were, and Seth, being the reunification of them, represents the ability of humanity to look within and realize their divine potential. And you have a very similar thing happening here in the Gospel of Philip, where the Gospel of Philip is saying that everyone is internally divided and need to look within, see their inner reflection, enter the bridal chamber, and unify all opposites to reach that higher state of consciousness and divine connection, where it says it would be that even the gods should worship humanity, not that humanity should worship gods, because humanity is God, and all the dumb creations that humanity has created, all the stupid external gods, are infinitely less powerful than what we are. The God of the Bible is nothing compared to us, because the God of the Bible is our creation. It's a horrible idea, a horrible thought, born out of ignorance. That's how Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, is born. It's a being born out of ignorance. And that's what we created. Humanity, out of their ignorance, created this idea, not a real being, an idea of this God that has now caused countless, think of all the deaths throughout history because of this stupid idea, this idea of a God that is wrathful and vengeful and demands sacrifice and violence, and how that got corrupted in terms of Christianity as well, when Christ tried to be like, hey, no, it's not about that. And then Christianity took over and was like, oh, well, maybe it is, and then completely twisted everything. So we are the true gods. All these other beings are just our creations. And when we realize that, well, we realize that they have no power over us. We are the ultimate ground and foundation of all reality and all existence. So my friends, I hope you enjoyed that. That was a lot of information, but guess what? There's a lot more. There's a whole playlist on the Gospel of Philip. Check out the playlists. It's just called the Gospel of Philip. And I want to remind you as well that if you enjoy my work, hey, my book is out right now, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind, which is all about how to reach a higher state of consciousness rationally. And my second book in the series, Meta-Rationalism, The New Science of Mind, is available for pre-order. Also, check out my podcast on Spotify. Just search Dawn of the New Earth. I'll also put a link in the description of this video for both things. All this stuff, I'll put links in the descriptions of the video. Dawn of the New Earth on Spotify. It's a great way to follow me on there to help spread this information around. And I also want to mention, of course, if you enjoy my work and you want to help my channel grow, the best way to do so is by becoming a member on Patreon or on YouTube. Check out all the different tiers, because when you become a member, we have a lot of awesome stuff. You can get access to all of our members only videos. There's a new one every single week. You can get access to our Discord server, where every Sunday we have the Nexus Academy, which is a live study group and classroom session hosted by Neogenian presenters, where we're currently going over my first book in those study sessions, which is really awesome. Anyway, check it out. Helps out a lot. You get access to a bunch of cool stuff. I really appreciate it, my friends. Means a lot to me. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, the Halloween Mom, DB, Nusalina, Eric, Christopher, Luke, Thomas, Ryan, Ian, and David Phillips. Thank you all very much.